Hello, this is Jess Hay from Creative Cards to You. I'm so glad you're here. Today I am making a birthday card for my dad, whose age shall remain a secret. To get started, I use these 4 distress sprays from Tim Holtz: pumice stone, tea dye, bundled sage, and rustic wilderness. A little bit later, I also add in some antique linen. I used a piece of Strathmore mixed media paper cut to an A2 card size. I also set my card on a mini rack so that it will dry faster when I used a heat tool on it. I added water to the background panel before I added the sprays to get more coverage and to help them run together. I am using techniques I learned from Tiffany Solario's mixed media classes. I highly recommend checking her out if you already haven't. I did edit out a lot of drying time, so just know that I dried a lot off screen and often with my heat tool. I also periodically mopped up what was on my mixed media mat from waffle flour. And now for the fun part. I sprinkled some instant coffee granules over the background, added water, and kind of moved it around with my finger to see what kind of a result I would get. I dried it with a heat tool carefully, and then added splatters of frayed burlap distress spritz. I stamped the hat and mustache from the Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz Curiosity Shop set with Catherine Pooler's Cargo ink. This is a fabulous ink color that gives a little bit of interest besides black. I then cut them out with the die cuts. I used Distress Crackle opaque paste to add some interest with this stencil from who knows where. I cleaned my stencil on the mat right away with a baby wipe. Next, I used this die cut from Seth Apter. Die cut it out of brown paper and used some Distress Oxide ink and bundled sage to add some color. It wasn't quite the look I was going for, so I then used some black soot Distress ink to darken up the edges. I also darkened up the edges of this rusty piece of ephemera that I got from Louisa Heinzel's Etsy shop. Then I used some watered down rustic wilderness spray to color the ribbon on the hat with a watercolor brush. I glued the hat and the mustache to a piece of foam that I had cut out from the same die cut for added dimension. I then dried the background panel to get the crackle paste completely dry and roughed up the edges of the card with a distress tool. I also went around the edges with frayed burlap archival ink. I added some of the ink color to the background with stamps and spots to add extra interest. I was totally fine with an incomplete stamping. I used recycled packaging and glued it on to add depth to the background panel. And once it was dry, I glued all of that onto an A2 card base and set an acrylic block on it to help it adhere faster. I stamped Happy Birthday from that same Curiosity Shop set on a piece of cardstock that I had used a decal die cut on, and darkened the edges with Vintage Photo Distress ink. I then arranged all of the pieces on the card panel and glued them on. I just love how the card turned out, and that the coffee adds not only a great grunge effect, but also a wonderful coffee smell. Thanks for watching. See you next time.